What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here. Welcome to our daily show where we discuss everything going on here in our country that you need to know about on a daily basis, including money, investing, the stock market, the fourth stimulus package update, and stimulus check update. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, make sure to click the subscribe button down below. It's completely free to do so. And remember that new videos come out here every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll keep you up to date here with everything going on here that you need to know about. And also, thanks for hitting the like button for us down below. Major news going on here. President Biden is requesting $33 billion in Ukraine assistance from Congress as the Russia threats of nuclear war is now making everybody here really concerned. You can see here Russia warns of nuclear war risk as Ukraine talks go on, which I think we all kind of know that the peace talks are not really going anywhere. These nuclear war risks and threats directly from Putin and Russia are becoming so much of a concern. You can see this headline here that Russia is actually warning their own citizens on Russian state TV that they, quote, comforted their own Russian viewers on nuclear war with saying, quote, "We all die someday." So this is what they're saying to their own Russian TV viewers. This is how it's progressing here. Yeah, you can see here Russian state TV hosts discuss the possibility of a war that expands outside of Ukraine here on Tuesday. And journalists and heads of Russian TV told viewers that a nuclear war would be okay because, quote, "we're all going to die someday," end quote. Yeah. Russian television has consistently discussed the idea of war spreading beyond just Ukraine, promoting the idea of an inevitable war against Europe and the world. Major Russian channels have been known for vitriolic rhetoric being broadcast to justify Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And that in order to stop other countries from intervening with Russia's war with Ukraine, a nuclear war would have to be a possibility. Wow. And they said, quote, "Personally, I think that the most realistic way is the way of World War III, based on knowing us and our leader, Vladimir Putin. Knowing how everything works around here, it's impossible. There is no chance that we will give up." They continue saying everything will end with a nuclear strike is more probable than any other outcome. This, to my horror, on the other hand, but on the other hand, with the understanding that it is what it is. Vladimir Solovov added, "But we will go to heaven, while they will simply croak. But we're all going to die someday." This is how the Russians think, guys. And they said this on national TV. Yeah, my wife said in the background that that's supposed to be comforting. This is what they're broadcasting on Russian television. So this is kind of what the world is dealing with. This is what we're indirectly dealing with in kind of supporting Ukraine. This is what the whole European Union is dealing with in supporting Ukraine. This is what even Sweden and Switzerland are dealing with in supporting Ukraine. There's now reports that Russia has now attacked Moldova as well. And I mean, even China has sent aid shipments to Ukraine. I mean, it's very similar to how World War II started, where Hitler took over country after country after country, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And you can see the headline here. Biden seeks 33 over $30 billion, $33 billion in Ukraine assistance from Congress. This is kind of our way to send military munitions over there without the U.S. and U.S. troops actually fighting this war. Um, Hopefully, it doesn't come to that. Hopefully, nuclear war doesn't come to that. You can let me know your thoughts if you think that's going to happen. If you think about just in one lifetime, World War II, World War One, Vietnam, Afghanistan, um, Iraq, all these different things have happened all in the course of basically one lifetime. I mean, maybe World War One's a little bit out there, um, but I mean, look at all that's happened in one lifetime, and now the Ukraine Russian war. It's really really sad, and the question here is: this going to turn into more of a massive world war? Is the United States going to be in this war? You let me know your thoughts here. But remember, the U.S. is not the only country providing munitions to Ukraine, and it's kind of a way for us to not have U.S. troops involved yet. The question here is: are we going to be pulled into this war fully? And is Putin going to use nukes? Is this going to become a nuclear war? And will the United States be brought into it? I mean, literally, Putin has threatened us with nukes. He's threatened Finland with nukes, Sweden with nukes, Ukraine with nukes, Europe with nukes. And this is a very real possibility. You can let me know your thoughts here. So this 33 billion is really a way to for Ukraine to kind of fight off Russia without the US and US troops doing it. But the question is, will the US be involved here personally in the future? It's sad to even think this stuff. President Biden is asking Congress to authorize more than $30 billion in, it comes to a total of $33 billion in additional security. This will have to be approved by Republicans and Democrats in Congress. I assume it will be. The previous funding has been unanimous, not unanimous, but almost 90 some percent of Republicans and Democrats have said yes to previous funding. And even Mitch McConnell has said that we should support this wholeheartedly. And Mitch McConnell has even said that we should provide more because it's better than us being in the war. The question is, will we be pulled into this? Economic and humanitarian assistance for Ukraine to help the country fend off the prolonged Russian attack over the next 5 months. The White House says it needs Congress to approve over $20 billion in security assistance for Ukraine, including $5 billion for weapons and other military aid, $6 billion for Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, $4 billion for the state's Department Foreign Military Financing Program, $8.5 billion for economic assistance for Ukraine, and $3 billion for humanitarian assistance for food security and funding. Quote, "We need this bill to support Ukraine in this fight for freedom," Biden said in remarks. "The cost of this fight is not cheap, but caving to aggression is going to be more costly if we allow it to happen and will continue to weaken the Russian army." The massive $33 billion is what Biden says is necessary to help the Ukraine military defeat a sustained Russian attack over the coming months and address the global impacts of the war. Officials believe the funding will last through the current fiscal year, which ends in September. Now, if the U.S. actually gets involved in this war, it's probably would cost much, much more. We'd probably spend that amount of money in in the blink of an eye. And like I've said previously, there's no winners in this kind of war, and there definitely would be it would be even worse if we're involved in this war, at least from our point of view. There's already no winners. There's a lot of losers. It's only getting worse. The longer this goes on, inflation is terrible. It's only getting worse. The longer it goes on, the longer gas prices are going to stay high. Food prices are going to stay high. It's just helping, exacerbate the situation. Um, of course, inflation was already going up before this because as we tried to come out of the recession. We try to come out of the pandemic. Of course, we have another wave of virus. We're starting to come up here again with a new smaller wave of the virus spiking up here in the U.S. In China, it's really bad. They have over 400 million people on lockdown. That's more than the entire country of the U.S. on lockdown. As people are trying to go back to work here in the U.S., unemployment's actually really low here. But we're dealing with a pandemic. Now we're dealing with a war over there. But inflation is a cause of all this. It's helping bring everything up. Food prices at an all-time high. Gas prices were at an all-time high and still really close to that. And now the next problem here is the U.S. economy on a brink of a major recession. We've had major Deutsche Bank warns. We've had major banks and economists warning. In fact, some people saying we're probably already in a recession. It depends on your view and what economic indicator you're looking at. In fact, here is U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg on an interview on Fox News. Here's what he had to say about inflation and recession.
What has, in your mind, the administration done to fight inflation?
Well, a whole lot, and I'll mention a few areas. One, what I work on a lot, of course, around supply chains. One of many things that's pushing prices upward is shipping costs, and anything we can do to smooth out any inefficiencies in the system is going to help. That's why we've been working both on long-term infrastructure investments and short-term improvements that are going to make a difference. But let's also acknowledge that there are a lot of things that can happen on the policy side that would reduce costs for Americans in addition to what we're working on the supply chain or other pieces of it. For example, the president has supported a move to lower the cost of insulin. House passed a bill. A few Republicans even crossed over to vote with Democrats on this to cap the cost of insulin at $35. And that's something I think most Americans would agree, at least for those families that are counting on insulin, is the sort of thing that takes the pressure off when you're seeing high prices putting pressure on other parts of the family budget. Look, there are some parts of the economy that are more responsive than others to policy choices, right? But we know right now we could act to lower the cost of prescription drugs, lower the cost of things like insulin, lower the cost of childcare. That's a longstanding policy goal of ours.
Right.
And again, what I'm working on is things that can help lower the cost of shipping.
With federal spending, though, FedEx owner, founder, CEO, Fred Smith, recently said, if I'm getting a government check, there's less incentive to go into the warehouse. Had we passed Build Back Better, that bill that Biden wanted, my guess is that we would be Weimar Germany right now. We'd have 25% inflation rather than 9% or 10%. And I asked about that when he was on the show this week. Take a listen.
Secretary Summers basically forewarned of this in February of 2021, instant reduction of demand, and then the stimulus payments created demand for goods, and then the third stimulus payment about a year ago created a significant labor shortage, and all of those went together to create the situation we have today.
So his point is that the solution by spending more money, and now there's this talk about wiping out student loan debt, doesn't really affect inflation.
Well, look, the decisions that were made to rescue the American economy, I think, are rightly credited with why we have low unemployment today and why more Americans have more money in our pockets. And yes, that means Americans are buying a lot. That creates a lot of demand. And when supply can't keep up, that is an inflationary pressure. But it's interesting that Germany was mentioned, right? So in modern day Germany and modern day Europe, you're seeing the same inflationary pressures that we're seeing in the United States. This is largely a global phenomenon. We're seeing the same thing with food prices. And most Nobel Prize winning economists who evaluated the president's fiscal policies believe they would actually serve to ease inflationary pressures. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but the bottom line is we're working against inflation with everything that we've got.
I want to ask you just quickly, and this isn't up your alley, but DHS Secretary Mayorkas said today that the Biden administration has, quote, effectively managed the border crisis. Do you believe that?
I think the men and women of the Department of Homeland Security and across the administration have done remarkable work under extremely challenging circumstances. We also recognize that those challenges continue. They may change, they may grow, especially as you see pandemic-related restrictions shift, like the conversation around Title 42. I'm not up on all of the specifics.
Yeah, and I don't want to go down that road, but he said in private in August that he told the Border Patrol, the agents, that the situation was unsustainable. And you have to watch as a transportation issue what's coming across the border and where those folks are going.
Yeah, no question. That's why we've been calling for immigration reform for years. Look, we've got a broken system, and the truth is only Congress can fix it for good. I, as a transportation secretary and as an American citizen, would love to see that happen.
We really appreciate you coming on, and I do want to ask you about this. Did you see this Washington Post thing with the top 10 Democratic presidential candidates for 2024?
Last thing on my mind right now is presidential elections.
All right, but you're number 2, ahead of Vice President Harris. It says Transportation Secretary moves ahead of Harris and would enter 2024 with more heft as a cabinet secretary. To the extent people don't want Biden or Harris, he's next in line, just in terms of sheer plausibility. Thinking about it at all?
No, what I'm thinking about is how to make sure that we deliver $500 billion worth of value out of the funding that has been entrusted to us by Congress, and that the president has asked me to ensure we get the transportation part of it's right. That is more than enough to occupy more than 100% of my attention and capacity, and that's where my energy is going.
Yeah, so a recession is on the way, or potentially already here, depending on what you think. The stock market's been getting absolutely wrecked here this week on inflation fears and recession fears. The Dow Jones up pretty good today. We may have seen the low there. So if you're a long-term investor, that may have been the low. It's really hard to predict the low. If you, my theory, I'm just buying in near. If you're anywhere near the low, it's a win. You'll never be able to pick the absolute low. It's a fool's errand if you try to pick the low. But you can see here, if we look at like a 1-month chart, this may have been the low, may be close to the low. If you look at a 1-year chart here, this is the Dow Jones index was basically at a 1-year low here of 34,000. But look, when you look at like a 5-year chart, 5 years ago, it was at 21,000. Okay. So it's still up about 60% in 5 years, which is, really, really good. The NASDAQ up over 3% here today at 12,871. And when you kind of look again, 5 years ago, it was at 6,000. So in 5 years, this is more than doubled your money, more than doubled your money. So again, you just kind of look at, stocks are, long-term investment, really, really good, but again, on a day-to-day basis, you gotta ride out those little bumps. It's, long-term investments here. The NASDAQ index, you would have, which is a lot of tech companies, Facebook, Google, Tesla, things like that. You would have more than doubled your money if you would have just held along for the ride over the last 5 years. Um, Good way to, kind of invest for the long run. And that's even including the terrible week we've had over the last week or so. That's even with recession fears and inflation fears. But the question here is, what do we do going forward? We have a lot of things going on here. We got inflation, World War III fears. Putin and Russia says they're not going to stop no matter what. What do you do about that? How do you? I mean, that's really a really good question. What do you do with a country and a person like Putin who says they're not going to stop no matter what? I'll let you guys ponder about that because that's a really great question. But the question is, if the U.S. actually steps in, then we're actually at war with Russia. And the problem with that, then all of NATO would be involved too. The problem is they're just crazy enough to just initiate nuclear war right at the gate. And I don't think anybody wants nuclear war. That's the problem. So yeah. I mean, does the US want to be involved in nuclear war? Yeah. So that's why just providing aid to Ukraine right now and letting them handle their war has been the best solution, not just for the US, but from all these other countries as well. All these other countries are basically doing the same thing. They're providing Ukraine with defense systems and letting Ukraine handle their war. It's not just the US's policy, it's everybody else's policy as well. So, I mean, again, we're not the only country making this decision. Literally, all of the European Union countries have basically made the exact same situation. Even neutral countries that have always historically been neutral, like Switzerland and Sweden, are doing the exact same thing. When in the last couple United Nation votes, overwhelmingly have voted against Russia. So that if you're ever kind of questioning, like, is the U.S. making the right decision? Is the U.S. just feeding us propaganda? If you ever kind of wonder about that, you can just historically look at the United Nations votes where they've just had several of them where they historically the United Nations hundreds or dozens of countries have all voted against Russia just recently here in the last weeks or months. So that's where you kind of know when all these countries around the world are voting against Russia. That kind of tells you if they're all thinking that way, that kind of gives you an idea that it's not just U.S. propaganda or something like that. That's what they're all thinking. So let me know your thoughts. I'll keep you up to date here with everything. There's a lot going on here in our country. So make sure to subscribe down below to our YouTube channel. It's completely free to do so if you haven't yet. New videos come out here every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can click here to watch my newest video next. You can click this top video here to watch my new video on Social Security raises. And you can click this bottom video here to watch my newest video on big stimulus check update video. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.